Tonight, President Trump remains intent on using his executive power to overturn the results of this year's election. While the efforts led by his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, have failed to gain traction in court, they are nonetheless testing American democracy. The latest gambit being pushed by Giuliani and Steve Bannon is an attempt to disrupt the Electoral College, which convenes next month. In short, there is a pressure campaign on state Republicans to refuse to certify President-elect Biden's victories. This all comes as this pandemic continues to ravage the nation. 250,000 Americans have now died from it, with outbreaks nationwide and hospitals strained. Joining us tonight are three top reporters to discuss it all. Peter Baker, Chief White House Correspondent for the New York Times. Asma, Political Correspondent for NPR and co-host of National Public Radio's Politics Podcast. And Paula, Reid, White House Correspondent for CBS News. Let's start with the news. The Trump team hit another wall Friday when Georgia's Republican Secretary of State certified Biden's win, and Michigan Republicans tonight showed no signs of budging after meeting with President Trump. Paula, you join us from the White House. What is the president going to do now?
What we've seen over the past week is a shift from this legal campaign that has been almost entirely unsuccessful to a campaign of political pressure. And nothing was a clearer example of that than today when two Michigan lawmakers came here to the White House to meet with President Trump. And he was expected to try to pressure them to try to flip that state, which of course President-elect Joe Biden won. But following their meeting with the president, those two lawmakers released a statement. They said, look, we've seen no information, no evidence that would change the outcome in our state. And they also notably said that they believe that this process should be free from threats and intimidation. Now, the president, we are told, is also possibly going to try to get some Pennsylvania lawmakers to come here, too. But it's clear, even if this pressure campaign was successful in a state or two, it would not change the electoral math for the president. There is no way to litigate or pressure his way to 270 electoral votes.
Peter, the president stymied in Georgia, Michigan, perhaps Pennsylvania. What is the big picture here? You recently wrote that Mr. Trump is doing something that no sitting president has done in American history.
Well, that's right. And I think this week was actually a turn even further toward the unprecedented when he moved beyond even just these sort of specious claims he's been making in court about non-existent fraud or fraud that isn't backed up by any evidence. Now he's turned toward trying to pressure the system itself to overturn the will of the voters. First by calling these Wayne County election officials, and now today, as we just talked about, the Michigan lawmakers. Now, in the end, I don't think it makes a difference. In the end, on January 20th, 2021, Joe Biden will become the president of the United States. Nothing we've seen so far indicates that there's going to be any change in that whatsoever. But in the meantime, he is ratcheting up the pressure, and he is putting enormous strain on the system, a system that relies on faith of the voters. And what's really remarkable about this is he has convinced a majority of his own voters, a majority of Republicans, that something untoward happened in this campaign. And that will be the lasting impact. He'll leave office, he'll go home, wherever he decides to go. But in the end, a lot of Americans who support Donald Trump will believe that something crooked happened in an election that his own Department of Homeland Security official said was the most secure election in American history.
That lasting impact is an important point. President Biden next year would have to deal with that sentiment in parts of this country. Let's listen to President-elect Biden speaking to this moment on Thursday.
He will go down in history as being one of the most irresponsible presidents in American history. It's hard to fathom how this man thinks. And it's hard to fathom. I'm confident he knows he hasn't won and is not going to be able to win, and we're going to be sworn in January 20th.
Asma, what is the Biden strategy?
Well, the Biden strategy is a bit of a glimpse of what you saw there. I was with Joe Biden a couple of times this week when he did take reporter questions, and there was this notion of, are you at all concerned that through this attempt to undermine the democratic process that President Trump might try to be delegitimizing your own victory? And, Joe Biden was remarkably, at least publicly, optimistic, insisting that he did not think that would be the end result. The Biden legal team has, been holding some briefings, and what we've been told is they have concerns that the rhetoric from the Trump team is no doubt very harmful to democracy, no doubt harmful to democratic institutions. But again, they don't believe that there is any path in which President Trump actually will be able to overturn the results. The Associated Press has it that Joe Biden won 306 electoral votes. Even if President Trump is, successful in one state or so, he is not going to be able to change the results. To Peter's point, though, I do think there are bigger questions about the lasting implications, regardless of when President Trump leaves office, about what this means for the health of our country and the health of democratic institutions.
Asma, what do you think it does mean? What does your reporting tell you about the answer to those questions?
Those to me are such unclear questions in this moment. There is a remarkably upbeat attitude, at least publicly, from the Biden campaign. They have expressed a frustration about the delayed transition process and the uncoordinated transition process. But in terms of what that might mean for voters, for sort of civil discourse in this country, I would argue that over the last 4 years, if I look at my own reporting from 2016 to 2020, it has become remarkably more difficult as a reporter to do grassroots reporting in a number of communities. And I do worry that it will become even more difficult to have civil discourse if we can't agree upon basic information, and this certainly doesn't help.
Paula, you laid out the state of play tonight at the White House, but I wonder, based on my own reporting, why the president is sticking with Rudy Giuliani. We saw the news conference this week. The president's not gaining politically. He's not gaining legally right now. I'm told the president sticks with Giuliani because of shared grievances. They have a generational rapport, and the president insists that he has been treated poorly by the Democrats, and he essentially wants to give it right back to them, that it's revenge in part for how he feels he's been treated over the past 4 years.
Absolutely. And the president will be the first one to tell you that he believes that Rudy Giuliani is a very respected man in America. While that was certainly true at one point in time, his involvement in many of the president's legal controversies has really undermined a lot of his integrity. That press conference that we saw yesterday, that was a bizarre press conference that very few attorneys in this country could say was really serving his client well. In speaking with other members of the president's legal team, he has many different attorneys in different parts of his public and private life. Look, nobody else wants to be involved in this case. They know this is a losing battle. They were waiting to see what happened in Pennsylvania, if the math was maybe on their side, that they could take it to the Supreme Court. When it became clear there was no way to litigate his way to 270 electoral votes, his stronger attorneys begged off, really leaving Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, someone who has publicly insulted the president in the past. They were really the only ones willing to take on this assignment, and the president is willing to have them.